Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. When I moved into the third floor of Maplewood Flats, it felt like a fresh start. Quiet, affordable, and tucked just outside a sleepy little town. The kind of place where neighbors wave but don't pry. My unit was 3B, right next to 3C. The landlord, a guy named Thomas, handed me the keys and casually said, "Only 2 tenants on this floor, you and the woman in 3C. She's quiet, keeps to herself." That was an understatement. In the first 2 weeks, I never saw her. Not once. No footsteps, no music, no sound. Just a single porch light glowing behind the frosted glass of her door, always on, always faintly flickering. One evening, I heard something strange, like furniture dragging across the floor. But it didn't come from above or below. It came from behind her wall. The next morning, I knocked on 3C's door, just to be friendly. No answer. I noticed something odd then. The peephole on her door was stuffed with cotton, like someone didn't want to see or be seen. I figured she just didn't like visitors. I dropped it, until I got home late one night, and her door was slightly ajar. I leaned in, called out. Nothing. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pushed it open. It was pitch black inside. No furniture, no rugs, no paintings. Just a square, empty unit with warped floorboards and a large rectangular hole carved into the center of the living room wall, covered by hanging plastic sheeting. Then, something moved behind that plastic. I didn't wait to find out what. I slammed the door and locked mine behind me. The next morning, I told the landlord about it. He just stared at me. 3C? He said slowly. That unit's been vacant since 2018. We don't lease it out. The wiring's a mess. It's unsafe. Didn't I tell you that? After Thomas told me 3C was vacant, I walked back to my unit in silence, pulse hammering in my throat. I knew what I saw. A door left ajar, plastic sheets swaying in a windowless room, and movement, human movement, behind them. Thomas must have seen the panic on my face. He followed me upstairs, unlocking 3C himself. This time the door creaked open into a sealed, decaying shell, cobwebs across the ceiling, peeling wallpaper, no power, and most importantly, no hole in the wall. Just a solid patch of plaster where I knew I had seen plastic hanging hours before. Thomas muttered, "I told you. Nobody's been in here for years." I didn't sleep that night, and just before dawn, I woke to a sound I'll never forget. Tapping on my bedroom wall. Soft, measured, fingernails, then a woman's voice, low, croaky. "You shouldn't have opened it." I shot out of bed and turned on every light. My wall was perfectly still, but something inside me shifted. I went to work that day in a daze. I couldn't focus. My coworkers noticed. One of them, Stacy, pulled me aside. "You live at Maplewood Flats, right?" she asked. When I nodded, she frowned. "Don't you know about that place? A woman went missing there. Unit 3C. I froze. "She was digging into the drywall," Stacy said. "Kept telling people she heard things inside the walls. No one believed her. They found her car in the lot, but never her body." I went home and stared at the wall separating me from 3C. I tapped it once, and it tapped back. That night I made a choice I still regret. I borrowed a hammer and flashlight from my closet. I turned off every light in my apartment and sat in the silence, listening. Just after 2 a.m., the tapping returned. 3 knocks, then stillness, then a whisper. "You're almost through." The drywall was soft, brittle, like someone had already carved from the other side. I struck once, then again. On the third hit, my hammer cracked through into blackness. Not insulation, not wiring, just a hollow space. I knelt, aiming my flashlight through the hole. There was a tunnel behind my wall, narrow, crudely dug. The floor sloped downward, and the walls were reinforced with splintered boards, old nails sticking out like teeth. I should have called someone. Instead, I crawled inside. The tunnel led deep, far past the apartment's boundaries. It twisted like intestines. The deeper I went, the colder it got. The smell changed, wet copper and rotting cloth. Then I saw them. Photographs, hundreds of them, nailed into the beams. All of people who lived in Maplewood Flats. Some I recognized, some I didn't. And then I found the final wall. Another set of plastic sheets, thin as a hospital curtain. I reached to pull them aside. A hand came through first. Pale, wet, fingernails broken. The woman's eyes were inches from mine, milky and wild, like she'd been down there for years. She hissed, "You opened it too. You're mine now." I bolted out of the tunnel, sealed the hole, left everything behind. I moved that same week. But I still hear it sometimes, in new apartments, wherever I go. A knock, then another. Then her voice, whispering through the walls. She's still looking for me. And now that I've told you, she might be looking for you too. I moved into Unit 4C on a quiet Wednesday afternoon. The building was nothing special, just another aging mid-century block in a forgotten part of town. Peeling paint, dim halls, a smell of damp carpet and boiled vegetables. But the rent was cheap, and I needed to get away from everything. The landlord, Mrs. Diedrich, was in her 70s and looked like she hadn't smiled since the Nixon era. When she handed me the keys, she paused and said, "Don't bother the people in 4D. Keep to your side. You'll be fine." I asked if they were quiet or something. She looked up sharply and muttered, "They don't like visitors." The next day, I passed 4D on my way out. The door was old and scratched, its peephole stuffed with a wad of newspaper. A strange smell seeped out from beneath it, wet earth, mold, and something metallic. I assumed the tenants were hoarders, but the longer I lived there, the more it started to bother me. No one ever came or went. No footsteps, no light under the door, no deliveries. And yet, I'd hear things at night. Soft dragging sounds, thumps. A voice humming a tuneless melody that made my skin crawl. Once, around 2 a.m., I opened my front door and peeked into the hallway. Their door was slightly ajar, a narrow black gap. I could hear whispering inside, multiple voices, talking, not in English. Then suddenly, slam, the door shut itself with the force of a gunshot. I stood frozen, heart hammering. The next morning, I asked Mrs. Diedrich again, who lives in 4D. She looked me dead in the eye. They never moved in. I laughed nervously, thinking she meant it as a joke, but she didn't laugh. She just locked her office and left the building. That night, something began tapping on my bedroom wall, the one I shared with 4D, slow, deliberate knocks. Then came the scratching, not like fingernails, like claws. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with the covers up to my chin, staring at the cracked ceiling, trying to convince myself the scratching on the wall was just rats or a busted pipe. But rats don't knock, and pipes don't whisper. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was a dream. Sleep deprivation, stress. Maybe my mind was just playing tricks on me. But the moment I stepped into the hallway to leave for work, my blood ran cold. A long, jagged scratch mark had been etched across my front door, about chest height, like something had raked it with nails. Or claws. I went straight to the super's office. It was locked. A piece of paper taped to the door read, "Gone indefinitely. No replacements." I banged on Mrs. Diedrich's apartment downstairs, but she didn't answer. I wasn't just creeped out anymore. I was angry. That night, I stood outside Unit 4D, my heart pounding. I knocked once, then again, louder. "Hello? Is everything okay in there?" Silence. Then, suddenly, 3 knocks came back. I stumbled backward. The door didn't open, but the air around it felt off, heavier, like the hallway itself had shifted. I pressed my ear against the wood. Whispers, dozens of them, all murmuring at once in a language that felt ancient and broken. One word, in English, came through. Closer. I staggered back and ran into my apartment, locking every bolt. That night, I woke to the smell of soil and rot, so strong I gagged. My bedroom light wouldn't turn on. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, and then I saw it. On my wall, above my bed, written in long, dirt-black streaks. "You knocked." I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the floor until morning, watching the wall, waiting for something to move. It didn't, until 6:13 a.m., when I blinked. In that split second, the writing was gone, like it had never been there. By day 3, I was unraveling. I skipped work. Every sound in the building twisted my stomach. The elevator's creak, a footstep above me, even the wind against the windows. But nothing compared to what I found when I finally worked up the courage to check my hallway camera footage. I had set it up facing Unit 4D, and what I saw made my spine curl. At exactly 3:11 a.m., my door opened. On its own. I never heard it, never even woke up. A tall figure stepped out of Unit 4D, not walked, slid, noiselessly, with limbs too long, and a head tilted at an unnatural angle. It stood at my threshold for 7 minutes. Then it leaned in, like it was whispering through the door, and vanished. No walking back, no door closing. Just gone. I was done. I packed a bag and decided to leave. Just a hotel until I could break the lease. I didn't care about the deposit. But when I opened my front door, I stopped cold. There was no hallway, just a blank wall of concrete. I turned to go out through the fire escape, only now my apartment door wouldn't close. It hung open into an endless black corridor, like a tunnel cut through space itself. And down at the very end of it, lit by nothing, was the door to Unit 4D, wide open, and someone, or something, was waiting inside it. I slammed the door shut, and suddenly, the hallway was back. Lights flickered to life. Voices returned. Everything normal again. Except when I turned around, the scratch marks were no longer on my door. They were on my ceiling, in a spiral, with one word at the center: welcome. I've lived in this apartment complex for nearly 4 years. It's nothing special, just a stack of aging one-bedrooms in a tired part of town. Most people here kept to themselves, which I preferred, but everything changed when 5B got a new tenant. I live in 5C, directly across the hall. He moved in late one night. I heard the elevator groan around 2:30 a.m., followed by dragging sounds, something heavy being pulled across the hallway floor. No talking, no moving truck, just him. I peeked through the peephole. He stood motionless in front of 5B's door for nearly 5 minutes, holding a box shaped like a bird cage. It was covered in a black sheet, and something inside it squirmed. The next morning, I tried to welcome him. I knocked twice. No answer. For the next few days, I kept hearing noises, not regular apartment sounds. These were clicks, like someone cracking their knuckles in rhythm. It came from behind his door. Sometimes at 4 a.m., sometimes at noon, no pattern, just those clicks and an occasional scraping sound like claws dragging along the wall. One night, I had a dream. I was inside 5B's apartment. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The lights flickered and something whispered from the shadows. He brought it with him. I woke up drenched in sweat. That afternoon, I ran into old Mr. Delaney from 5A. He looked pale, his eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Have you met him?" I asked, nodding toward 5B. He hesitated. "I saw him once. He was cleaning the hallway with his hands." "What?" Delaney nodded slowly. "Just crawling on the floor. His palms were raw, like he'd scraped them bloody. Said he was trying to get rid of the scent." "What scent?" Mr. Delaney just walked away. The next night, I stayed up watching the hallway through my peephole. At 3:11 a.m., the lights flickered. Then he stepped out of 5B, barefoot and shirtless. He crouched low and sniffed the carpet. He turned toward my door and smiled. He knew I was watching. I didn't sleep that night. After he smiled at my door, I backed away from the peephole and locked everything. Deadbolt, chain, even wedged a chair under the knob like I was in some cheap motel horror movie. Around 3:30 a.m., the scratching started. Not loud, just faint scrapes along my wall, the one I shared with 5B. It sounded like nails, or something worse. I pressed my ear to the plaster and nearly jumped back. I could hear breathing, slow, shaky, wet. I didn't report it. What could I say? Hey, my neighbor breathes too loud and crawls in the hallway at night. But I started watching him. The next few days, I became obsessed. I memorized his patterns, or rather, his lack of them. He left the apartment once a day, always at different hours, sometimes 2 a.m., sometimes noon, always wearing the same dark hoodie and never locking his door behind him. He carried nothing, didn't speak, didn't even acknowledge me when we passed. But every time I walked by 5B, I felt it, that thing inside, a heaviness, like the air wasn't right. Then, Tuesday night, I heard a thud, followed by another. I opened my door a crack and saw it, a long smear of something red from his threshold to the stairwell. Not blood, thicker, almost black. It smelled metallic like rust and meat left in the sun. I followed it down the hall, adrenaline overriding caution. It disappeared by the third step, vanished, like it never existed. I went back up and stood in front of 5B. Something was watching me from the peephole on his side. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, this sick weight in my stomach, like 100 eyes pressed into my skin. That night, I dreamed again. This time I was inside his apartment. The walls were covered in handprints, hundreds of them, some small like children's, others massive and stretched unnaturally long. In the corner stood the black bird cage, shaking violently. Something inside it hissed. The man knelt in front of it, whispering, "It remembers who saw." I woke up choking on my breath. When I opened my eyes, there were 4 fingernail scratches carved into my bedroom wall. I packed a bag that morning, no sleep. Just sat on my bed watching the scratches on my wall, trying to convince myself I had done them in my sleep, that it was stress, a breakdown, anything human. But deep down, I knew it wasn't me. That evening, before I could leave, I heard screaming. A woman. From inside, 5B. I froze, keys in hand, as it shrieked again, sharp, wet, full of agony. I dialed 911 but didn't hit call. I just stood there, listening. Then, silence. Complete. As if sound had been sucked out of the hallway. I walked up to the door of 5B. The hallway light above me flickered and buzzed. The air smelled like burnt hair and something rotting. I raised my fist to knock, but the door creaked open on its own. The inside was wrong. It was massive, too massive for a one-bedroom unit. The walls bent at strange angles, covered in peeling wallpaper that pulsed faintly, like skin over a drum. At the far end, I saw the bird cage again, larger than before, occupying an entire corner. Inside it, something moved, too fast to follow, too black to define. The man from 5B stood in the middle of the room, arms stretched toward me. "You saw it," he whispered. "Now it wants you." The door slammed shut behind me. I tried to run, but the floor stretched beneath me like a rubber band, keeping me in place. The lights dimmed, and from every corner of the room came scratching, hundreds of tiny claws. Then came the whispers. "Welcome. You shouldn't have looked. It lives behind the eyes." The man began to twitch violently, and then he tore his own face off. Not in blood, in light. His body collapsed into a black hole of nothing. And then I understood. 5B was not an apartment. It was a door. And now I've stepped through. I never escaped. I think time works differently here. I hear others come in. Screams echo now and then, sometimes laughter, sometimes crying, but they never last long. I write this in case someone finds my phone. If you're reading this and you're thinking about knocking on your strange neighbor's door, don't. Because some neighbors don't live next door. They live outside the world, and once you see them, they never stop watching.